Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Following these words, the United States launched itself into the Second World War. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the city of Colorado Springs, Colorado, purchased 60,048 acres of land at the southern end of the city from various peoples and donated it all to the United States War Department. Construction on this land began quickly, and on January 31st, 1942, Camp Carson was opened. The camp was named after legendary Army Scout General Christopher Kit Carson. This construction project employed nearly 11,500 workers. Housing facilities were provided for 35,173 enlisted men, 1,818 officers, and 592 nurses. The 89th Infantry Division was the first major unit to be activated at Camp Carson. During World War II, over 100,000 soldiers trained at Camp Carson. Along with 3 other infantry divisions, the 71st Infantry Division, the 104th Infantry Division, and the 10th Mountain Division, more than 125 units were activated at Camp Carson, and more than 100 others were transferred to the mountain post from other installations. Nurses, cooks, mule packers, tank battalions, a Greek infantry battalion, and an Italian ordnance company trained at Camp Carson. Camp Carson was also home to nearly 9,000 Axis prisoners of war, mostly Italians and Germans. Between 1942 and 1956, pack mules were a common sight at Camp Carson. The first shipment of mules arrived by train from Nebraska in July of 1942. The mules were used by pack battalions to carry equipment, weapons, and supplies over mountainous terrain. The most famous of these pack mules was named Hambone, the pride of the 4th Field Artillery Regiment. For 13 years he carried first sergeants up Ute Pass to Camp Hale. Camp Hale, located near Leadville, Colorado, was where the Army conducted cold weather and mountain warfare training. Hambone died in March of 1971 and was buried with full military honors. Activity at Camp Carson was greatly reduced following the end of World War II. By April of 1946, the military strength at the mountain post had dropped to around 600. It appeared that Camp Carson would be closed. With the onset of the Korean War, however, activity once again increased. Many Reserve and National Guard units were called to active duty and stationed at Camp Carson during this time. Camp Carson became Fort Carson in 1954. In the 1960s, mechanized units were assigned to the mountain post. At that time, additional training land was purchased, bringing the post to its current size of 137,000 acres. Fort Carson also has its own aviation facility, Butts Army Airfield, which was constructed between 1963 and 1966. Throughout its history, Fort Carson has become home to 9 divisions. An additional training area, comprising 235,000 acres, was purchased in September of 1983. This area was named the Pinyon Canyon Maneuver Site. It is a training area located approximately 150 miles to the southeast and is used for large maneuver training. Exercises and deployments continually sharpen the skills of Fort Carson soldiers. When not deployed, soldiers train annually at Pinyon Canyon Maneuver Site. Additionally, units participate in joint exercises around the world, including Central and South Africa, Europe, and Southwest Asia. In 2003, most Fort Carson units were deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. Troops were also sent in support of the Guard mission at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba. President George W. Bush addressed soldiers and family members at the post on November 24, 2003. He praised the soldiers' determination and the sacrifices that their families had made. Fort Carson's beautiful scenery has made it one of the most requested duty stations in the United States Army. It is considered the second most popular duty station on the continental United States after Fort Lewis, Washington, and it adopted Best Hometown in the Army as its motto in 2007. Fort Carson experienced a construction boom in 2007 and 2008 in preparation for the return of the 4th Infantry Division from Fort Hood, Texas. Arrival of the 4th Infantry Division brought approximately 5,000 additional soldiers to Fort Carson. The city of Colorado Springs would not be what it is today if not for Camp Carson. The establishment of the base brought thousands of people to the city, and the base itself provided thousands of jobs for the citizens of the city. With the establishment of Fort Carson, Colorado City has grown to the large city it is now today. Old Colorado City is only roughly 1/16 the size of the full city today. The influence of military establishments throughout Colorado Springs is still very prominent. Though Colorado Springs is now rather large, Fort Carson still holds more land than the city. Fort Carson is not, however, the only military base in the Springs. Along with soldiers from Fort Carson, Colorado Springs services military personnel from Peterson Air Force Base, Schriever Air Force Base, and even those from the United States Air Force Academies. The effect and influence that Fort Carson has had and continues to have on the city of Colorado Springs is obvious, and Colorado Springs would not be what it is today without Fort Carson.